Welcome back. This is part 2 of making the sheath for the Cobra knife. Last week we talked about making our paper template. We got all the parts drawn out, lined up, and now it's time to put them on the leather. I'm starting with 7 to 9 ounce leather for the main part of the sheath. I found a nice corner, and now I'm using just some masking tape to tape it down. I'm not actually going to cut out the sheath part. What I'm doing is actually just marking on the leather where I'm going to do the tooling. I do the tooling on my leather while it's still part of the main piece. What I often find is if I cut it out, tool it, the tooling itself has caused the leather to change sizes. This is me just forgetting right now that I needed a little bit of a border across the top of the sheath, so I'm just using the dividers to draw that in. But I find if you actually do all of your tooling while it's still part of the main piece of leather, you minimize the distortion. And then once I've got all the tooling done, then I'll go about and start to cut it out. Here I'm just using a pencil. I'm tracing over the part I'm going to tool out and just making a nice little small indent into the leather. You'll be able to see it once I pull it out. It's very, very faint, but I'm not really trying to mark it too much. If anybody's got a better way to do this, let me know. This has been the way that's worked for me. So it's just a matter of tracing over the lines with enough pressure, not to tear the paper, but just to make sure it creates a nice little indent in the leather that I can see. Once I've got it all traced out, I'm going to save the template, but what I'm going to do is end up picking up the paper off the leather, and you'll see very faintly in the back of that where the two tooling zones are that I've pressed in. It's not very dark. It's not intended to be. This is actually the tooling set that my grandfather used to use when he was on a trap line at night, no TV, so they actually used to tool leather from the stuff that they trapped. I'm taking the swivel knife and literally just cutting out the zone that we're going to tool. Again, if anybody knows a better way to do this, let me know. I go slow, unless I speed up the camera. But I'm literally cutting in the zones for the tooling. That's because I'm going to bevel in the sides eventually. Next step is to actually wet the leather where we're actually going to do the tooling. So I know a lot of guys use sponges. I actually like using the paper towels. I don't know why, but I find I get a little bit more control. I wet the paper towel, drag it on. I'm looking to get it quite damp to start with. There I've got a little bit of a hole in my dish. I never realized I had a pinhole, and it starts to leak out. So what I'm going to do is use this scale stamp. The scale stamp itself is because it's a Cobra knife. Cobras have scales on their skin. So I've got the leather nice and soft, and I'm just positioning it pretty much center. It's a small area, so I don't really need guidelines or anything. But now I've got a nice imprint, and now it's just rinse and repeat until we get the whole area tooled in. I probably take longer than I need to line up each strike, but most of the time I try and do it with just one hit. I found with this scale stamp I had to really whack it. Not sure why, but for some reason I can't get much penetration with this. I've got a couple other stamps that I get much better penetration with. As I get close to the edge, what you can see is I sort of just tip the stamp so that it doesn't go over onto the outside of the zone. And now I'm just using a beveler to bevel in the edges. That'll give me a little bit of relief, and then when I actually apply the border, it should help the border stand out quite a bit. But I find this is probably my most challenging part, is a nice smooth bevel on the edges. So I'm just light taps, moving it along until I can get a nice solid bevel all the way around the zone. But you can see that it's not actually distorting the leather too much, because it's all bound by the surrounding leather. If I had this actually all cut out, but I would have cut it to my template size, tooled it, and found it had grown by a couple eighths of an inch on each side, so maybe a 1/4 inch wider, making everything not fit. Here I'm just adding a nice little border. It's a half moon stamp going around the entire area. It just gives it a little bit more of a finished look. And there we have our tooling done. Eventually it starts to look like this. So you can see the 2 areas that we tooled. If you liked it, please like the video. I'll try and answer any questions I can. And we'll see you for part 3.